We are covering what is the first major ousting of a Trump White House official in the young second term that we're here living through. It's the security official who uncorked a breach by adding outsiders to a government group message discussion on the app Signal. It's a big deal. You probably remember hearing about it. Well, he's been relieved of that security post. Michael Waltz out as National Security Advisor. That is, of course, a key role typically held for, well, longer than 100 days, typically for years, by seasoned national security vets. This move is Trump's first major senior staffing change of the second term, coming just 48 days after Waltz first released internal discussion of war plans through that app. Many experts said it was a fireable offense at the time. It drew magazine covers, kind of reflecting and really mocking what was seen as an amateurish mistake, playing with larger risk. National security experts said that mistake literally made the United States more vulnerable to massive foreign cyber attacks. Today's move shows how the lingering scandal and the heat ultimately proved too much, at least for the official to be in this post in the Trump administration.
Editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, says he was accidentally texted war plans.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic.
So the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was
Who was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility.
Trump said it'll never happen again, and from now on, they'll only talk about war plans over Snapchat.
The White House and the president's national security team doubling down on efforts to shift blame surrounding that Signal chat debacle.
Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility. I don't think he should apologize. I think he's doing his best.
Maybe he was doing his best. The verdict is that it wasn't good enough. And so those early defenses, nothing to apologize for at all, have melted into a version of what passes for accountability, even if it comes with spin and is partial. Waltz is taking another job for the Trump administration in New York, representing America at the UN. No permanent replacement has been named today yet for Waltz, so Secretary of State Rubio will be the temporary backfill. It is the kind of shakeup Trump has sought to avoid, the Times reports. And while the UN can play, of course, important roles, Trump and Republicans have routinely belittled it as something like a world hall monitor. So being sent up to New York to meet with those foreign diplomats outside of the circles of power in Washington is, in a MAGA sense, viewed as a demotion. There are signs Waltz himself heard about this very last minute. He was on the White House grounds, we could see there this morning after doing a TV interview. And after some tough headlines about this change started trickling out, the White House then announced he would take this UN vacancy. There he was today. The Signal breach cost Waltz his job, so it is notable that he was just caught using Signal in an open press gathering of the cabinet again this week. This is a Reuters news photographer who captured his hands, you see there. Now, experienced people know when you go to the open section of the cabinet meeting, the mic is on, it's on the record, as they say, and the cameras and the photographers are quite visibly there. Yet this Reuters photographer was still able to capture him opening his Signal app and including what he lists as apparently real names of high-ranking officials. They're not using code names here. There's references on his phone to what looks like Rubio, Gabbard, and J.D. Vance. You see there. The phone exposed a message from the sender named J.D. Vance, which said he had, quote, confirmation from a counterpart, and, quote, it's turned off. That's what we could read on it. Those are fragments of the communications. They could mean a lot more to certain foreign adversaries who can combine them with other intel. So that was his last cabinet meeting as National Security Advisor. And to be clear, like the security breaches that dogged his now short tenure, it might be remembered more for that kind of sloppy approach to security than the boilerplate statements he made during it, praising the president.
This is leadership at its finest, led by our commander-in-chief who loves the troops and they love him. You had 100 days of your leadership with respect, with strength. It's an honor to serve you in this administration. And I think the world is far better, far safer for it.
Whether the world is safer remains to be seen, but the Trump administration's impact on safety and creating safety risks out of whole cloth is what got Waltz ousted so quickly. I mean, again, if you think about these jobs are probably hard to do, but if you just did nothing, you might have had less of an impact than how much he leaked about war plans. Now, another short-lived Trump aide you might remember on your screen there, Anthony Scaramucci. Well, he got in a little jab roasting his fellow MAGA traveler when this news hit today, noting Waltz has now served about 9.2 Scaramucci's as a unit of time for people who don't hold down these jobs very long. Now, that's the tumult inside the White House. And it is just one job, albeit an important one, that reinforces how facts matter. It was the fact of sharing the war plans, covered, documented, sort of can't really spin or deny your way out of that. And then the story lasting, people staying on it, that ultimately changed the staffing. Now, that's just one position, an important one. But it reminds you that while the administration and some of the folks around them say they use their own reality or nothing matters or the press doesn't matter anymore, this was entirely a product of the facts, the reporting, and the sustained pressure. Around the nation, Trump continues to be really facing a souring economy and a trade war that is hurting him. And for all the talk about Republicans who move with lockstep loyalty, that, Ted Cruz will stand by Donald Trump once he won and never push back, and Trump has benefited from that type of support at times, it's also notable right now that Donald Trump has picked a giant fight that's still going on with a right-leaning group that isn't rolling over. I'm talking about financial conservatives and Wall Street and people involved in all that work because they're alarmed over the costly tariffs that are driving the economy down, shrinking gross domestic product, which is a warning sign for a possible recession. Fox News' sister outlet, the New York Post, skewering Trump today for hiking toy prices with his tariffs and then trying to minimize it all. Skimp on the Barbie is how the front page is mocking the president. And it is still the economy stupid, as James Carville memorably put it. And the point there is not just that the economy can drive election outcomes, it's that the economy just sets the baseline mood. In boom times, people may look the other way. But when things go bust, like they have under these tariffs, the nation takes a more skeptical look at its government. And people are now hearing facts about Trump's stumbling 100 days, which is clearly driving opposition, as I mentioned, in conservative media like the Post, in financial quarters, and then really across the country here. These are really stunningly negative underwater results for Donald Trump. You look at this on your screen, we are a long ways from his November comeback, underwater in all major polls, down 11% in Fox News. So that's the temperature. Then there's the political thermostat, because we are in a dynamic process. There are those who think you should just give up or tune out. And as a free country, you could do that. But there are others, like the signs we see at some of these protests today, this one in Michigan, you voted for democracy, not dictatorship, that are trying to summon the moment to build something larger. In California, we saw a sign that simply says, "We, the people, deserve better." Thousands were seen gathering in Boston, in Washington, in San Francisco, and Chicago. These are new rallies. So if you're watching live on television or on YouTube, you're seeing things that are happening now. Today's news, but it might look familiar because over the last several weeks, we've covered a bunch of similar scenes. Smaller groups in small towns, some of them in conservative and red states, larger gatherings in the large cities, of course. It's a pro rata per capita type thing, but this keeps happening. More of a groundswell than we've seen in most administrations' early periods. The shrinking economy also drawing comparisons to a very memorable Seinfeld episode featuring George Costanza. So Jimmy Fallon brought this up on Late Night, discussing Trump's trade war leaning to economic shrinkage, to that shrinking GDP I mentioned, and likening it to George's troubles.
He shrank. Trump was like, well, it was the 3 coldest months. Of course, it was shrinkage.
Yes, the U.S. economy is undergoing what economists refer to as a George Costanza.
You can see the shrinkage got everybody thinking. But the joke only works, especially in mass late night shows, if everybody is in on the punchline. A lot of folks watch late night, including people rooting for Trump, including Republicans or conservatives and what have you. But the facts still matter. And if you dare to tell people that the economy is not shrinking, that the trade war is working, you are going to run right into the brick wall, which Trump has run into in this polling I showed you, because people are living it. You cannot fool people out of their economic lived reality. And like I mentioned, some folks are following the news less these days for all kinds of reasons. You don't have to follow the news to have heard about the failed tariffs and your retirement accounts going up in smoke and all of it being the choice of this president. So how does that reality and these other governing problems collide? We have two special guests when we're back in 90 seconds.
I didn't think this administration could still shock me. But today's story, which I read about in The Atlantic, was beyond belief. It was like, holy crap, on steroids.
Holy crap on steroids. That's how National Security veteran Senator Warner explained his reaction to Rachel Maddow when we first had that signal breach. I'm joined now by MSNBC contributor Professor Jason Johnson and Sabrina Singh, a veteran of the Biden campaign who served as Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary. Jason, one takeaway is the facts documented and consistently repeated did have an impact here.
They did. And it's something that I think a lot of people are surprised. There are so many different mistakes we've seen, strange people we've seen move into this administration, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard. I think there was a belief by a lot of people in and outside of Washington, when was someone finally going to face consequences, right? When was someone finally going to get in trouble for the mistakes that we've seen in this administration? So Waltz is out, but again, he's kind of being given a promotion, depending on how you look at it in MAGA world. I mean, taking somebody who couldn't respect the importance of signal chats and then sending them to the UN actually potentially exposes us to more security breaches. So it's a sign that the Trump administration is not completely immune to public sentiment, but not necessarily a sign that they've learned their lesson on how to be responsible with national security secrets.
Right. I think the fact that they haven't learned their lesson because they have not cordoned this person off, even as he was busted by the Reuters photographer using Signal again in a public setting. Forget the other protocols. We're all around the cameras, and as journalists, we love getting new information. So within reason, I mean, we also have our standards and practices. We don't just take any phone photo we see and throw it up there. But we love getting information, but this would seem to be incompetence, not a choice to share it. Having said that, Jason, I'll let you continue and then bring Sabrina in, who has a lot of background here. Politically, they view it as a demotion because they're not into the UN. Right. NSA, they view as a bigger thing.
And that's the thing, you know, it is a reflection of the failure of this administration to recognize that the United States, and mind you, they're doing everything in their power to make sure we don't remain a global power, but the United States is still a global power. And therefore, moving from a domestic position to the United Nations should be seen as a promotion. The idea of taking somebody who's incompetent and now putting them in a place where their incompetence can be on display for the entire world, including our enemies, is not good decision making, certainly from a president who always claimed that he hires the best people.
Now, Sabrina, you know why you're one of the perfect guests for this, right?
I think I have an idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the intersection. You deal with national security reporters. There is, of course, some public obligation for us to know about what the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies are doing. But as your work, straddles that, you have things that are classified or secure, and so you dealt at that intersection. I'm curious what grade you would give Waltz. Not only for the original breach, but taking into account that he didn't seem to improve from it, to learn from it, if you will. What grade do you give his conduct, and where do we go from here?
Well, look, I'm certainly not a professor here, but I think there was already room for improvement, and Mike Walls already showed that he failed at that. I mean, starting that Signal thread, adding the reporter, of course, that is a problem one. But I think even though Mike Walls has now been fired and moved out of his position, or maybe promoted in some way into the UN, the person that really committed the crime here was Pete Hegseth. I mean, you have to remember that it was Hegseth who put classified classified information about
Right,
a
who sent
military
it. Yep.
operation that hadn't started into that chat. So even though they're rearranging, the pawns on the deck here, Mike Walls still hasn't been held accountable. Pete Hegseth still hasn't been accountable. And at the end of the day, the moving and the chaos that Donald Trump has injected into the system, the national security system, a system that relies on steady leadership, that really sends a message to our adversaries and to our partners and allies around the world that there is chaos in this administration.
Yeah. Jason, I mentioned the wider mood out there. We can always aim for the stars and say in a perfect civic democracy, everyone would be informed and following the facts and reasoning out Jeffersonian debates all the time. But that's not reality. People are more distracted than ever. The media ecosystem we know. And yet the economy is something you cannot avoid. I don't know about you. I have some
Right.
friends who say, oh, yeah, you do the news. Like, I try to avoid all news. And I'm like, I get it. I could see how that could be a nice week as a short-term solution. You can't avoid the economy if you're working and living in the United States. Here's Fallon joking about the polling.
Trump claimed that egg prices are down, gasoline is down, and groceries are down. Then a staffer said, sir, those charts are your approval rating. He said, oh, it's all.
They're syncing together. That's the joke. But they're also syncing together. That's the reality because of how people live. No, Jason?
Yes, and here's the thing. The Trump administration is going to try and spin this, right? They're going to say, yes, Fallon was joking. Oh, there's a little bit of shrinkage in the economy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? They think they can spin their way out of it. But here's the thing about the economy. You can't, because it's the thing that even people who avoid news, as you mentioned, have to deal with. It's not just egg prices. It's housing. It's the lack of housing that we're having and the slowdown in housing production because you have so many people who are migrant workers who aren't working anymore. It's what you're hearing now about organizations and companies saying, we're not going to order products for Christmas. The slowdown has already started to happen. This administration just fails to be in touch with the reality of Americans. And when this hits in the summer, when people are not taking vacations, when summer camps are scaled back, when people are saying, you know what, we're going to order pizza at home instead of going out to dinner, it's going to be impossible for Trump to spend this, and it's going to be impossible for members of Congress to hide from it in 2026.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Sabrina, while we have your expertise, I wanted to put up the headline that you have to go back a long ways to find a time where we had a Secretary of State sort of doing double duty. It has happened. Kissinger did it as NSA. I think we have that. Yeah, it notes Rubio will hold both positions, something no officer has done simultaneously since Kissinger, which he did under Nixon and Ford. And he was let's just say he was a expansive type of diplomat. But that was more of his power grab as well. If you look at history here, it seems more like just, hey, we had a spot open. Do you have any thoughts on that structure, whether Rubio wants it or is up to it? Is that a good idea on the policy side?
Well, I mean, he's not just doing double duty. He's not just acting as the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State. He's also the administrator for USAID that they've now completely disbanded. So he has a lot of responsibility on his plate. That is not those three jobs are usually represented by three different individuals. I think what matters is how long is this going to be an interim position for Marco Rubio? It's not sustainable for someone to have that position for an extended period of time. It's just the world events just don't allow for that. And to have the National Security Advisor, that person is with the president pretty much at all times and traveling with the president. The Secretary of State has that ability to be abroad and away from the administration and engaging on parts of the administration's behalf because they're not tied to the president all the time. So I don't know how this balance is going to work. I think it's how long really Marco Rubio can occupy that interim position for. I would hope it's not for that long because at the end of the day, the Secretary of State position is so important and needs the full attention of that individual at all times.
Yeah. Sabrina and Jason on all the above, thank you. We have a lot coming up. We have Tesla looking at now getting a new CEO instead of Musk. We have our special guest, Ron and Santa, here on that and what's next in the Trump economy. And if you've seen the tease box, as we call it, we also have this special guest coming up.
Maybe we need to talk about the president and his golfing habits. When we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is. These are our national secrets. He decided that he was going to golf as the markets were tanking. I can't tell if y'all are for anything other than obstruction and cruelty. He wanted to play games while the rest of us are really trying to make sure that we can serve the American people.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett making waves, taking names. It's her Beat debut. That's coming up tonight. Do you ever feel like more stuff happens quicker than before? We do, and I'm going to show you why that seems to be true. Because if someone would have told you a year ago the richest person in the world was going to take a big role in the campaign and then in the government, but not actually follow any ethics or disclosure rules, and then jump out of the government and then lose $100 billion, that would be a lot. Now look at the Wall Street Journal's reporting, a bombshell about who you can probably guess I was referring to, billionaire Elon Musk. The Journal reports Tesla's board has already opened a formal search to replace him as CEO because that is their fiduciary duty, if you want to use the technical term. They have an obligation to run the company well, and he's wiped out about a third of its value while busily doing other jobs. Quote, Musk confided to someone close to him that he was frustrated to still be working nonstop at the company. He no longer wanted to be CEO of Tesla. Is this any way to run a business? He's so rich, he gets away with a lot. We've seen that. But at a lot of companies, if you really don't want to be there and you start publicly doing other stuff day in and day out, do you really keep the CEO job? Can you imagine any normal, productive company allowing someone to moonlight for the government for this long, 102 days and counting? Now, I shall also tell you that Musk and Tesla deny this report. The Wall Street Journal is very reputable, but they are publicly saying they deny it. So I want you to know that as you make sense of the different accounts. It has been a tough couple months for the car company. Tesla stock, as mentioned, crashing, losing a third of its value since Trump's inauguration alone. Tesla's Cybertrucks were ultimately recalled in March because of big problems like the stainless steel panels just falling off. You might recall Musk stood in front of the White House breaking his vow to not abuse his government role to sell his stuff. And he said the Cybertrucks, they look like the future. Well, not if the future is a car that doesn't fall apart. Last week, Musk did say he will be stepping back and away from the Trump government project. He also says his car company is doing okay.
We're not on the ragged edge of death, not even close. I remain extremely optimistic about the future of the company.
Musk told reporters in what was billed as kind of this exit interview for the government role that he has now taken a look back over what he's accomplished to try to limit what he called, remember, waste, fraud, and abuse by the federal government. Here's what he says, quote, I think we've been effective, not as effective as I'd like. We're probably getting things right 70 to 80% of the time. Now, in certain fields and certain businesses, 70% is just fine. But if you follow the news, as I bet you do, if you're hearing my voice, you know that in government, when you're dealing with, say, nuclear safety, something he touched on, or the security of everyone's social security numbers, something he interfered with, or, I don't know, whether baby formula is safe, 70% doesn't cut it. You cannot be a government safety regulator and have a third of the nukes or the baby formula go out there in a dangerous way. It is not a statistic that anyone with any government experience would say is okay. Now, again, being a disruptor in tech, that's a different thing. And we've mentioned in our coverage that Musk has been very effective at building companies. Whether he is effective and safe running the government is the current question. He's also lost about twice as much of his own personal wealth compared to what he says he cut from the government. We have also the reports that the way he did this, rushed, sloppy, and at times trying to fire first and find out if it was legal later, has cost the United States government under the Trump administration tens of billions of dollars. So, what has happened here? And what will we learn from it in an era where some billionaires will look at this and go, gosh, I don't want to lose all my money in politics and stay away, if they look at the Musk example. But others may look at this and go, oh, if you're willing to spend a lot, and maybe you don't care what happens to some of your money and your businesses, isn't that the point of having enough money? Will other billionaires be jumping in? We want to take this seriously, and we've called in an expert who you've probably seen on air, Ron Insana, the finance expert, talking about this and the Trump economic woes next. Elon Musk eyes the exits. The Wall Street Journal reports Tesla's looking for a new CEO, which he denies. And we're joined by CNBC contributor Ron Insana. Welcome for being here.
Good to see you.
Great to have you here.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you being here. Look, we wanted to come to you because we often look at this through the news politics lens out, but Musk is a business guy first and foremost. So as
richest man in the world.
and the richest man in the world. So when you look at this on the business side,
Yeah.
How do you make sense of what we're hearing?
Well, I think you said it entirely accurately. The board of Tesla, whether it's captive to him or not, has what we like to call a fiduciary or responsibility or an obligation to shareholders to ensure that the CEO does his job at least adequately, right, and maintains the growth in the company. And you've seen the stock fall, as you said, by a third. It was down as much as 60% at one juncture at its lowest level.
Wow.
He was down $100 billion on his overall net worth at one point. Sales for Tesla cars in Europe and China have fallen off. They've fallen off in the United States. And so, the company's not functioning as anyone would hope. And he clearly has been more than distracted with his role in the government. And so he's also, by the way, running 4 other companies. He's got SpaceX, he's got some other companies. He's building out Grok, this AI component to X. So he is unique in a certain sense. I've never seen anyone this hyperextended as a CEO in my career.
Is he overextended?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, and you would think that of any normal individual. I mean, he's proven to be like Edison or others.
I didn't call him normal, Ron.
Yeah, no, I don't. But there are folks like Edison and others who have done multiple companies, multiple jobs, created multiple things. And so, in that sense, you can give him some breathing space. But yeah, I would say that from a time perspective and an attention perspective, he has to be overextended. You cannot do all these things and give them your full and undivided attention so that they're all operating at full speed. Now, maybe the people underneath him are, and at this juncture, he's just supervising and checking in, which is what some of the stories indicated, particularly with regard to Tesla. But no, you can't really do what he's done and keep your eye on every facet of the business underneath you.
Right. And when he joined government here, he had an agenda. Right? You can call it agenda or ideology. And it basically argues in its core that government should run like business and be lean.
Yeah.
That's the idea. And what we're seeing with the public response is that pushed to its max, most people, including self-identified independents and conservatives, do not agree.
Right.
A dash of business, people go, oh, I don't like the DMV. I get it, right? You can name businesses that are more customer friendly than
local government, by the way, not federal.
And it's local. Yeah. But what he's done has actually, in 100 days, provoked a backlash where people say no, whether that comes to the Social Security office being open, or the error rate on nuclear review, or the breaches on personal data.
Yeah.
And then when you come to the firings, this is a really interesting stat. This is courtesy Forbes. A lot of businesses, right, if you're not doing the job, they get you out of there. People say, oh, sometimes that's necessary.
Yes.
Well, under Musk, our government is now cutting more jobs than any other sector.
Yeah.
I repeat, any other business.
And it's starting to show up in the economic data as well.
So there are plenty of businesses that cut some of the people some of the time, to paraphrase Bob Marley, if you know that one.
Yeah.
He's cutting as many of the people as he can, as much of the time. So now the government is responsible for more job cuts than any other sector. Is that a good thing? Is that sustainable?
Well, number one, it's indiscriminate, and it's done without real care for how services are delivered by the government. One individual once described the United States government as an insurance company with an army, right? I mean, you have a lot of different aspects of our government that really are there to serve individuals in a variety of ways, from Medicare to Social Security to other services that are necessary. And there are 2 fallacious assumptions about government as well. One, that you can run it like a business, which is a profit and loss making enterprise, or 2, that the government's budget is like a household budget, which it is not. The government can print money, can borrow money extensively, and do things that households cannot do. And so if you use either approach and take this kind of slash and burn approach that Musk and the Doge folks have taken to the U.S. government, they're doing it without consideration as to how it actually affects the individuals that the government serves. Now, if you tried to do that with your business and you showed no care for your customers, and you just slashed and burned the company and basically rated it for its available cash, which they're not even doing here, you would be undoing all the good work that a business has done. And I would say a large
number of individuals would argue that this is not the way you run the government. You do some analysis of it. In fact, you can go back, all right, to 2010 when the Simpson-Bowles Commission released its findings on how to
Shout out
right-size the government.
Simpson-Bowles. No one talks about that anymore.
And it was a beautiful document. It was really well done. It was really well thought out.
Yeah.
You could, at least work on the budget deficit, right-size government, focus on priorities that are helpful to the American people. And that's the exact opposite of what's been done by Musk and his team.
Yeah, and while he's made his point with his shock and awe, in no way, and we've discussed this in the executive order context as well, and maybe for his foes it's a good thing, but in no way has he put forward, like you said, a blueprint that gives you a 10 or 20-year timeline to actually amortize or save these benefits over time. Instead, it was whoever was weakest and most vulnerable, see ya.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and it's all left on the table. So, Ron, we came to you as the business expert. We appreciate it, and we'll be having you back.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Up next, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett makes her Beat debut.
Donald Trump has got to go. Hands off our democracy, hands off women's health care, hands off, to be honest, there's too many things to list.
Our leaders need to stand up to Trump and get Elon Musk out of our government.
I'm really afraid for the future of our country, and the only way to make that known is by standing together.
Growing protests and pushback. We're seeing a lot more than is typically seen in an administration's first 100 days. Many mobilizing on May Day, which is a protest for workers' rights. The stakes are high, and another sign the fight against Trump is gaining momentum. As the New York Times puts it, one Democrat says the party must play hardball and do its own disruption of norms and institutions, given what they face against Trump, as he openly says he wants to overthrow the United States Constitution and rule past 2029. We're joined now by Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Good to have you here in person.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Beat. We've seen you out there pushing harder than some Democrats. What do you see in this mobilization right now? And does the elite or leadership wing of your party in Washington get it yet?
Listen, I got to say thank you to the people, right? Because this is a grassroots movement and the people are saying we are tired. And, whether or not we get it, I think that our solutions look a little different, right? Like there are those within the party that are saying things like, well, we did not give them the middle class agenda. We somehow left the middle class. But I'm like, we never left the middle class, right? We know that this administration, the previous administration, was trying to help out those that were struggling under the weight of student loan debt and saying if we can help them out, then this means that they can go and create generational wealth and go buy homes. Like they had real solutions. The child tax credit, where you were getting up to $300 per child to help you out because child care is high, and all those things. When we look at some of the legislation that was thousands of pages long, such as the CHIPS and Science Act, states like Ohio were able to get a chips manufacturing facility that Samsung was bringing in, which meant jobs, which meant manufacturing, and so many other states were able to benefit. But did we communicate it?
Yeah.
Not really. Did people really understand what was happening? Not per se, right? And so, everybody has different solutions. So some people want to dig in and say, let's get to the policy, right? But what good is policy if the people don't understand or know that that is what you are going to enact? Or when it comes down to it, we are such a big tent party that we have certain people that say, well, never mind, I'm not going to push hard for those reforms, say by the time we get to the Senate and we have to deal with the filibuster.
Kamala Harris spoke out. She's been laying pretty low, but she spoke out about some of this tension within the Democratic Party of what you do, and named some names, including yours. Let's take a look.
And I will tell you, the courage of all these Americans inspires me to lift up voices and advance freedom and justice, including congressional leaders like Cory Booker, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, Jasmine Crockett, all who, in different ways, have been speaking with moral clarity about this moment.
One difference seems to be whether we're after an election where Democrats said democracy itself is on the line and we're facing an autocrat, then do you just go back to saying, well, never mind, we wrote a letter, we'll hold a hearing and be done with it. Van Hollen, of course, traveled on that mission. Booker, we saw people have said that you seem to be taking it up a notch.
Yeah.
Are you guys still though in a minority within your party?
I mean, I would say so. I do believe that. I think that everyone is trying to be very responsive to their district, and I can't speak for any other district. I can tell you that my district wants me to speak out and be loud and be proud at all times. But you know what? We've got lots of great opportunities, and so I'm looking forward to some of the things that we're going to do on oversight as we continue to push back against this administration. Now that we know that they are doing things such as, snatching people off the streets and throwing them down in what I would consider to be concentration camps or prisons. And these are people that haven't been convicted of anything. And it's wrong. Listen, we have oversight over them. If we are in a contract with El Salvador, then it is us that have to decide as to whether or not they are violating human rights. And so we have to be given an opportunity to inspect. So even if James Comer says, no, Democrats, you can't go down there, well, we are elected members of the Oversight Committee. So we should be requiring that they turn over reports to us. Same thing with the FDA is they're going out and they're firing people, and we don't know what its impact is going to be as it relates to our food supply, and they don't want to tell us about it, whether or not our food is going to be safe. Then guess what? We need to make sure that we require that they turn those documents over to us. And if they don't, guess what? We need to show up at their doors and we need to conduct a field hearing right there at FDA. Same thing as it relates to the planes that are falling out of the sky.
Right.
We need some real transparency and we need some honesty, and we need to make sure that the American people are just as enraged as we all should be.
Right.
Because this administration is truly trying to kill us, it feels like.
All right, we got you on that. There's also the thing in life and politics where sometimes things just work until they don't.
Yeah.
And so Donald Trump has made all kinds of claims, and he improved his vote total in November. So you have to look at how that worked. And yet in this new town hall he did with Bill O'Reilly, you saw some of the bravado sort of fail in person. That's why town halls, whatever you think of them, like, you still have people there.
Yes.
They might be partisan, but you still get some reactions. Take a look at this moment.
Lee says, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made in the first 100 days?
That's the toughest question I can have because I don't really believe I've made
You made
mistakes.
any mistakes?
We're in a transition period. We're in a transition period.
I think Lee is
you're gonna see-
reassured.
I think
There was sort of an audible laughter, and maybe that's how you go with your own side, but it was still not acceptable. It was not on the level, even in that audience, that he doesn't see that he's made mistakes. The implication being those people think he has made mistakes.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you this. People tried to talk about the mental acuity of Joe Biden, and as someone who was able to interact with him, I never questioned his mental acuity. But come on now. Come on, like, you are crashing the economy. We are talking about record crashing of the stock market. We are talking about, you just mentioned it, the amount of people that he has fired. We are talking about people complaining and saying there is nothing at the ports.
Right.
We are talking about CEOs coming in and sitting down with you and saying that these shelves are going to be as bare as they were during the pandemic. Like, no, everything is a problem, not to mention Signalgate. And now you've got one of your, appointees stepping down because somebody was going to have to take the blame.
Right.
Now, I think
For
it's
the
the guy
security,
that needs, it's the guy that says he wants to have his makeup room that needs to go somewhere, because at least Mike Walls has some kind of experience within government. Unlike Pete Hegseth. But honestly, get rid of the entire cabinet. We need to start over because everything is messed up, from their HHS secretary. I know you're probably trying to move on to something else, but I'm just saying, I could go on
No,
for
I got
days.
you. We have to fit in a break, but
Yeah.
start over. 100 days, start over. We got that message, Congresswoman.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. We'll be right back with something special for our Beat viewers. Finally, turning to an item Nicole Wallace mentioned at the top of the hour. For all the discussion of journalism and the current administration, we have some news about the news tonight. It's positive. The News Emmy nominations came out today. They include our NBC colleagues' interview with President Biden, newsworthy, an ABC journalist interview with the president as well, and CNN interviews with then presidential running mate J.D. Vance, and with parents of an Israeli taken hostage by Hamas. All of those are for the Outstanding Live Interview category, and we received a nomination in that category as well. It is an honor for our entire Beat team here to be nominated among these great colleagues. Our nomination is for an August 2024 interview with senior Trump advisor Stephen Miller. That reflects our effort to report and hear from many different voices and press for answers and fact-checking. That interview was in the heat of the general election with an official who's now number 2 in the White House.
Project 2025 has absolutely nothing to do with the past, present, or future. President Trump and President Trump alone will make his own policies.
There are issues where we see a kind of overlap. Project 2025 talks about a top-to-bottom overhaul of the FBI. That's something that, as you know, President Trump has talked about. Project 2025 talks about cracking down on these abortion drugs. The current Republican platform talks about using the 14th Amendment to try to enshrine sort of this sort of life test.
There will be no national abortion ban under a Trump administration.
Just some of what we heard in the interview. If you want to go back and check it out, you can go on YouTube and search Melber and Miller, or go to our playlist address. MSNBC also received nominations in other categories for Deadline White House and Paulo Ramos's reporting. We do congratulate all of our colleagues, journalists, producers, and bookers on the recognition of a nomination, no matter where people work, and of course, no matter who wins. We will keep at it. That does it for us.